Blacks in Technology.
Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology.
Welcome, everyone, to another fantastic and exciting episode of the Big Tech Talks, a.k.a. the Blacks in Technology podcast. I'm your host this evening or this afternoon, wherever time zone you're in. I'm Greg Greenlee, founder of the Blacks in Technology organization, along with my incredible co-host and business dev consultant for Blacks in Technology, Ayuri Selassie. We are going to do a little bit of housekeeping. We're going to talk a little bit about our bid improvement survey and a little bit about Big Tech Talks. So first thing, member count. We're now up to 1,058 members on the site. Everybody, keep supporting Blacks in Technology. We definitely appreciate it. We're definitely shooting for 2,000 members and 10,000 members after that. So keep supporting Blacks in Technology. We're doing some great things, and we definitely need your support. Twitter followers, we're now over the 3,000 Twitter followers mark. Yee-hoo. Thought we actually never get there, but we did. Blacks in Technology, the network is growing. LinkedIn member count, we're at almost 1,300 LinkedIn members, so that's great as well. I love, to see people starting to come together, really start supporting Blacks in Technology and everything that we're doing, so keep supporting us. About the bid improvement survey, we are going through a planning stage of redesigning Blacks in Technology, and we need your help. So head on over to blacksintechnology.net. On the front page, there's a link for our improvement survey. Tell us what you like about Blacks in Technology. There are a bunch of questions on there. Not a bunch. There's some questions on there to kind of gauge, the interaction with Blacks in Technology, what you like, what you don't like. And we need this input so that we can better design the new Blacks in Technology, Blacks in Technology 3.0. And also, there's a contest attached to that. So once you fill out the survey and you submit it, you're automatically entered to win one of two books. One is a Windows Server 2012 up and running book written by one of our members, Samara Land. She's an editor at PC Mag. And the other one is UX for Lean Startups, which is a great UX book for people out there that are into user experience. So you can enter, you fill out the survey, you're automatically entered. We'll pick a name. I think sometime in December we're going to do this. We're going to do the drawing, and then we'll notify whoever won, and you'll have your pick of one of those two books. I think there could be I think we're going to have maybe 3 winners, so everybody has a good shot. Next thing, Big Tech Talk. If you're listening to this podcast, use the hashtag Big Tech Talk. Let us know what you think about the podcast, what you think can be improved upon. And, if you have any questions or anything, use those hashtags to send us some questions. Or if you have any ideas for the Big Tech Talks, let us know using the hashtag Big Tech Talk. Right now, we're on the road towards recording our 50th podcast. This is actually podcast number 56, and we have 4 more to go till we reach 50, which is a pretty great milestone. So in conjunction with that, we are in conjunction with an NPR promotion or event that's happening. NPR is doing an event as well. We're going to let Ayuri tell us a little bit about this NPR hashtag campaign.
Awesome. So thank you, Greg. So NPR has been started a discussion back in November, either November or October, about African Americans in technology, and starting on December 2nd until December 20th, they will be continuing that conversation about African Americans in technology via Twitter through a social media campaign called hashtag NPR Blacks in Tech. for every day between December 2nd and December 20th, there will be 2 African Americans in technology tweeting a day in the life. So follow that hashtag and engage in those Twitter conversations. We'll be taking questions from different people throughout who have interest in technology, and hopefully we'll be having some really groundbreaking discoveries there. And also, as Greg mentioned, this is our first podcast in a series leading up to our 50th podcast, where we'll be taking a deep dive into the topics around the perception, the participation, and visibility of African Americans in technology. So we hope you will join us for this podcast and the following up to our 50th podcast. This is really exciting, and we're really glad that you all are joining us.
Definitely. And for tonight's podcast, for our 46th podcast, we have our guest, Maurice Cherry, on the show. So Maurice is the founder of Revision Path. He's a developer and a designer. And we're going to go ahead and introduce Maurice. Maurice, thanks for thanks for taking time out and to join us on the show. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and about Revision Path.
Okay. Well, like you said, my name is Maurice Cherry. I started Revision Path in February of 2013, and my purpose for starting it was to be a showcase for Black graphic designers, web designers, and web developers, because I felt that the general reporting in the sort of tech and design community really seemed to neglect those people. And I don't know if that's purposeful or not, but certainly I didn't see it. And I, go to conferences and network with people. And so instead of really lamenting the situation and trying to sort of strike back at conferences and websites and wonder why they don't feature diversity, I figured it would be easier if I just made a showcase, talked to a bunch of people, and just took it from there.
I definitely commend you on founding Revision Path, because I talk to a lot of people, and I always say that, the internet is the biggest media outlet there is, and we need more content out there to increase our visibility, which is one of the pillars of Blacks in technology. So definitely commend you for starting Revision Path, and that's revisionpath.com, REVISION path.com. So give us a little bit about your background and how you got started as a developer and designer.
Okay. Well, my background is a little, I guess you could say it's a little unorthodox. I started, really being interested in computers when I was younger. My mom gave me a hand-me-down Laser 50 computer that my older brother had, and it was using that I learned, I kind of taught myself BASIC, and this was maybe in like first or second grade. So sort of just programming with BASIC, doing little simple programs and subroutines and things like that. And so I started learning BASIC and sort of went with that through, I'd say maybe through about 6th or 7th grade. Kind of didn't really do much after that. I actually went more into writing. I was writing a lot in middle school and writing a lot in high school, but also in high school, that's when I started taking up HTML. I had just a basic GeoCities page, and I would pull up websites and kind of reverse engineer how they built everything. Because, this was like 95, 96. So there weren't any websites or books that really describe, like how to build a website, how to do this. Everything is sort of like the wild, wild west. It was just a unmapped frontier. And then I went to school. I went to Morehouse College. I went there, started in computer science and engineering because I wanted to be like Dwayne Wayne from a different world. And after my first semester, I switched because I went to my advisor and said, "Oh yeah, I really like what we're doing and learning C++, but I really want to do stuff with the web. Like, is there any way that we're learning anything about web applications or anything like that?" And he's like, "No, you should just switch your major." And so I switched my major to math. So my undergrad degree is in math. After that, I did a bunch of different web jobs, AT&T, WebMD, Autotrader.com, did a lot of different sort of startup type things. When I was actually at Morehouse, I interned for NASA for 2 summers. So I did a lot of different kinds of things. In 2008, I left AT&T and started my own design firm, now 318 Media, which just turned 5 earlier this week. So that's been a really just sort of big thing that I've been doing here, which is providing design services for politicians and nonprofits and small businesses, individuals. So my whole background has been really kind of varied.
Nice. That's was Dwayne Wayne, was he a comp sci person?
No, he was doing engineering. Because see, it's funny because they sort of put it up in the show. But I think he started off with math like around season 2 because his whole pickup line was that he made a 1600 on his SATs or something like that. I think that was like his pickup line. And then he did, like programming stuff with Konnichiwa Electronics. And then he did that for like a summer or 2, and then he came back and was teaching math at Hillman. So it's funny because I wouldn't say I did that same thing, but I started out in computers and then like switched over to math. So interesting.
Why didn't I ever pick up on that? I never even realized that.
Anyone who is not able to follow this conversation,
I might get.
Yeah, so this is about Dwayne Wayne was a character in the television show A Different World. And I remember that. I remember being a little kid watching that television show and seeing him, and of course, with this being a show with African Americans, it was like we watched it every week when it came on with my whole family. And that one episode when he created that video game and everything blew up and his career changed and he had all these changes happening in his life with his wife and everything.
Yeah, that was right near the end of the last season. He made that game called Grammar Boy.
Yeah, Grammar Boy. Too cute.
Why don't I remember? I'm about to get my geek card revoked here. I totally don't remember that at all. Maybe I was just more into the jokes of the show than I was what they were actually.
Dope. That's all. Because I had to do that.
Oh man, yeah, I have to go back. I have to go back now. It's funny that you mentioned that you mentioned subroutines and everything like that, because I remember go-to statements, go-sub statements.
Oh yeah. I was learning that because I remember we went to our local public library and we had it was this big green book on teaching yourself basic, and I remember I could only do so much on my little computer, and then I went to school, and I think it was right around 1st or 2nd grade was when we started being introduced to the Apple IIe, and then saw how that could run basic, and so I started doing programming stuff in my gifted courses, in 2nd, 3rd grade with that big green basic book. So if I can find that book again, I'm so getting it. I don't even remember what it's called, but if I can find it, that's going to be a collector's item.
I see Commodore 64s all the time on Craigslist. People are always getting rid of them.
I saw a Laser 50 on eBay, but it was too late for me to buy it. But I'm keeping my eyes peeled for it.
Excellent.
So Maurice, I'm interested in sort of your perception of African Americans in technology, and so we talk about these designers, and I think we talk a little bit about developers and code. So I wonder, do you feel like there are more African American designers than coders, or sort of do you see any kind of difference between the two? Are they one and the same? What do you think?
Well, I feel designers and developers in sort of the way the current web is, those lines are really blurring because there's so much of development that crosses into design, and there's a fair amount of design that crosses over into development. So it's sort of like a Venn diagram where there is some overlap between the two. Generally, when people think of designers, designers are more creative. So they're, looking at things with typography and the usability and user interface design and trying to figure out the psychology behind a particular thing. Whereas web developers tend to be more technical in nature. So they're focusing on like problem-solving skills. They can code in a number of different languages, whether it's HTML, CSS, or JavaScript, PHP, Ruby, Python, what have you. There's a lot of overlap there between the two. Saying if there's more one than the other is it's kind of hard to say that, only because I think that I just think that there's a lot of overlap between the two. I know that with people that we talk to for Revision Pass, I think we probably talk to more designers. But there's a fair amount of developers out there, and there are even developers that will sort of vary on what is considered development. They might not think that programming in HTML and CSS is exactly web development. They might think that is more web design. So there's always that little kind of overlap, I think, between the two fields.
Okay, yeah, I love that Venn diagram. I'm going to have to ask you to work with us to produce that Venn diagram and more, because I remember when I was doing quality engineering back in the day, and quality engineering was very much manual testing, and nowadays quality engineers are also expected to code with automated testing. So that whole kind of perspective of folks who work in quality and developers or programmers are blurring as well. So there's a nice little Venn diagram there.
Right. Absolutely.
Excellent. Maurice, tell me, where does some of the inspiration for designers come from? Like, and I ask this because I'm seeing before Blacks in Technology was, redesigned a couple of times, I had like no clue as to into the world of web design, right? Like I knew about web design, but I had no clue as to how much goes into actually designing websites, just from an aesthetic point of view, until one of my friends, Ravel, was showing me all these mind-blowing sites. Like, hey, you want to see some real good stuff? Take a look at this, and then you'll see why this site looks way better than this one. He was telling me about fonts and all this stuff, and I'm like, wow, really? This is like a science. So tell me, where do you get some of your inspiration? Where does some of the inspiration come from?
For me personally, or just I guess like designers in general?
Well, for you and in general.
Okay, well, I mean, for me, I'm inspired a lot by music. I tend to do a lot of more thematic type design. I have to get into a certain mind space to really get to a certain sort of design point. So, for example, I really like mid-century modern type typography and designs, think like Saul Bass or things like that, which is like right around the 50s, 60s. He did a lot of title cards for Otto Preminger and Alfred Hitchcock, stuff like that. So for me, like with music gets me in a particular mindset when I'm designing. So if I need to design something that's more gritty, I might listen to like MF Doom or Wu-Tang or, something like that. If I need something that's more like mid-century modern, like I was describing before, I'll listen to like Benny Goodman or some big band stuff. If I need something that's more in a 70s-ish kind of thing, I'll listen to, James Brown or the OJ. So like for me, it's music. Music gets me in the right sort of, mental mindset to then think, okay, look at fonts, look at colors, look at things like this. And then when I'm in that mindset, and I would extend this, I think, to designers in general, there's a fair amount of research that goes into it. I think a lot of people have the notion that designers sort of dream up concepts. And there are some that do, but there's also a fair amount of us that have to do research if it's for something that we're not totally familiar with. So there's a lot of research that's looking into, specific design at the time, colors that were used, fonts that were used, sayings and slogans, and there's a lot of research that has to go into it. I would say any designer that doesn't do their research, if they're really trying to nail a particular theme, is probably reinventing the wheel, because there's a lot of stuff out there that's already been done that you're trying to do. There's sort of that notion that looks like good artists copy Great Artist Steal or something like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot out there that's already been done that you can sort of grab inspiration from. And using research, I think, is a good way to get a lot of information about that, whether it's just design theory or color theory or anything. Just getting that research helps you to have a body of knowledge to pull from that you can use to help create, bigger and better things.
Yeah, that's awesome, because I read this book by a woman named Laura Klein, UX for Lean Startups, and I saw one of her presentations, and she talked about sort of rapid prototyping and sort of the value of that in UX and in app design. And she one of the things she encouraged people to do is using your Chrome or your Firefox, plugins. You can go to a website that you really like, and you can just go in and use the inspector, use the design inspector, and you can modify the code within the web browser, and you can copy the code within the web browser, and you can pull it in and do other things with it. And so she really encouraged that, and I was like, like why try and do it all from the start? Like, as you said, don't redesign the wheel, right?
Yeah, it's so much. It's like leaps and bounds easier now, and I tell this to anyone that is getting into design. It's so much easier now for designers and developers that are trying to get into this field and learn, because there are a plethora of resources. There's tons of books. There's people out there that are willing to help you. Like, there's 20 years ago, none of this really was here. Like 1993 was there was nothing really. The web really didn't start kicking off until like the mid-90s. So, I mean, just think about how young this field is and how much has happened within such a short amount of time,
Yeah. Have you ever had any of your designs jacked?
Well, I think it is. I would say it's probably. I wouldn't say. Well, let me not say it's par for the course, but I have had that happen. But I don't mind it. I guess it depends on how they're using it. Like, if they're using it to make money, I might have an issue with that. But it's happened. It's happened in the past mostly. Probably not so much now, but it's happened in the past.
Okay, so you're pretty cool about it. You're not you don't flip out about it. That's good to hear.
I mean, like, I'll reach out. Like, if I see something that's being used in a particular way, of course I'll reach out and see. I'm not gonna, just completely fly off the handle, because 9 times out of 10 the person may not have even known. They could have gotten in touch with me or something like that. Like, it's that saying about how you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar or something like that. I understand people that do sort of fly off the handle when there's the slightest accusation of online theft. I get that. But it's also important to remember that anything you're doing, it's probably been done before somewhere in some fashion. So try not to, get too mad about it. One piece of advice that I got early on with design is that you have to be prepared to kill everything that you make. Everything that you make, you have to be prepared to, eviscerate it, to slaughter it. And the sooner that you embrace that, the better your work gets, right? Mm-hmm. When you realize your work is not good enough, kill it. Start again. Do something else. That's probably the best advice that I've gotten early on about design. Like, you have to be prepared to just kill anything that you make. Like, don't hold on to something too much, because then you'll start to not see it objectively. You'll see it subjectively. There's always room for improvement. I look at that even with revision paths. Like, there's tons of ways I can improve it, and one day I'll get around to that. But right now, I'm not sweating it. So, yeah.
That's funny that you mentioned that. There was actually a music kind of thing going on. This was some years ago. You remember when Timbaland, the producer, first came out, and he was just blowing away everybody, all the competition and everything like that. Everybody wanted a track from Timbaland, right? And but then you had a bunch of people pretty much copying his style, the way he did his drums or whatever.
Right.
And he got upset about that. He didn't see it as flattery or anything like that. He really got upset about it. And I think he had mentioned this in an interview. He was talking to, I think he was actually talking to Prince. And he had mentioned it to Prince, how upset he was about it. And Prince just told him flat out, like, don't get upset. Like you're too good to be upset about this. Just do something and do it better.
Yeah, you can't. Which is funny because, like, when I started Revision Path, for example, there were other people that were telling me, like, well, someone else is doing this. There's another site that does the same thing. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'll be another voice to that chorus instead of trying to be, like Beyonce.
Gotcha. Nice.
Cool. So I have another question. So this is sort of a little bit more theoretical.
Okay.
So we talk a lot about the perception of African Americans in technology on this podcast. And so I'm really interested, as from the perspective of a designer, if you were to redesign the perception of African Americans in technology, what would it look like? How would you redesign it?
How would I redesign the perception? Well, I think that redesign the perception. There would certainly be more democratization, I think, across the field of just like technology and design in general. A lot of what we see, just the public face of technology, is like Silicon Valley with design. It's sort of along those same lines, design-based startups and things like that. And, if you want that to be your goal, like I want to get to Silicon Valley, I want to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, like, hey, that's great. Do I think that needs to be the end goal for everyone? Absolutely not. Like, whatever your definition of success is, strive for that. Your definition of success may not be, I want to get to Silicon Valley and start a company and be bought out and have millions of dollars. Like, that may not be what you want to do. You may want to have a comfortable living where you make $6,000 a month and are able to travel 4 times a year. And that's success to you. And if that's what it is, that's what it is. But in terms of the perception of I guess, people of color in technology, particularly with Black people, I would like to see us more confident and more visible. I'm not saying that we're not visible, because we're certainly, in any number of positions, whether it's designers or if it's network type stuff or anything like that. I mean, I teach also. I teach design to business students. So I know that there are people that are interested in this that look like me that are coming up. So it's not a huge shock, or it shouldn't be a huge shock to anyone, that there are people of color that are in this field. The visibility is something that people might not see, because the visible face of, technology is at these conferences and these, startups and things like that, where there are pretty much no people of color. But that's more based on how the media is covering it, I feel. Of course, the media wants to look for those success stories, that kind of thing. And with those success stories comes a certain level of validation from other media outlets, which is why these are the stories that you see. And I think that, that's kind of par for the course with any kind of news, right? They focus on just specific types of things, like if it bleeds, it leads, that kind of thing. But speaking more so on confidence, when I interview people for Revision Path, and even before Revision Path, and I would talk to other designers and developers and things like that, there seemed to have been a tacit lack of confidence regarding their abilities. Like, yes, this is what they do for a living. Yes, this is how they, make money. This is the title on their business card. But they don't really want to talk about it. They don't really want to say, this is what I do. There's sort of a sheepishness that comes with, standing up and saying, well, yes, I'm a designer and I'm going to talk about this. Or I'm a developer and I'm going to talk about this. Which I can see a little bit where that comes from. And I'll just give a personal example here. When I worked for the state of Georgia back in 2005, I wanted to attend South by Southwest.
Mm-hmm.
Once I attended South by Southwest, it was, I think, one of the first interactive festival years, and I wanted to go, and I was sort of telling my boss about it, and she was like, no, I don't think you should go because you're gonna, how is you going to South by Southwest going to represent the company, and it's going to cost this much, and blah blah blah, and yada yada yada. I think depending on whatever your job might be, there could be some level of pushback from your employer when you're trying to speak up and speak out and make a name for yourself within whatever your position is. They might try to keep you down or hold you down in some sort of way. And I know people that have work, they might be doing a side project, but they'll say, oh, I also work for this, particular employer, and they've gotten reprimanded for it or they've gotten fired for it or something like that. So I think that there could be that level of, fear, I guess,
mm-hmm.
behind working somewhere and then saying, oh, I'm going to speak up about what I know, because what may happen is your company might not support you in that way, which I think is a lot different from when we see non-blacks in tech, I should say, doing that same thing. And I don't know if that's really just an overarching reason. I know that's one reason that I've seen, but I think there's certainly kind of a lack of confidence when it comes around to really saying, this is what I do, this is the work that I do, I'm going to speak up, I'm going to show what I do in this particular type of fashion. It tends to be very insular. I'm going to do what I do, and it's going to stay in this little bubble, and I'm not really going to try to talk about it or say anything about it or stand up and say, I am, a designer, I am a developer, in a way that could make you more visible.
I think
I just see that a lot.
Really,
I see that a lot.
Yeah, I think you really hit on something really hot right there, because, if you take the sports analogy, right, and you've got your basketball player, and when he runs, he takes the ball down the court and he just slams it in, and he is just super emphatic and excited, and then the football player, and he makes that touchdown, and then he's dancing, and he gets the technical foul for the dancing and all that stuff. Even in that field where we really dominate and we really, have shown that, we are really the greatest players in the world in that particular field of sports, there is still a lot of negative sort of visibility that comes with being that visible, a lot of negativity that comes with being that visible. And I do think that people tend to take that fear into their careers in high tech that says, well, I'm already African American. I already stand out. Maybe I'm not going to
draw more attention or something
by speaking at this conference, by trying to do this keynote, by being very visible, because there is some degree of risk that comes with that.
Absolutely, there's certainly a degree of risk when you're making yourself that visible. And this is, for me, it's not something that's new. In 2005, when I started the Black Weblog Awards, I was getting all sorts of hate mail and, oh, this is racist. And I get that even now about Revision Path. I'll just say, oh, Revision Path is a showcase for Black web designers, graphic designers, and web developers. Well, don't you think that's racist? No, I don't think it's racist at all. And I'll just leave the conversation at that, because I'm not going to teach you how to be equipped to give a conversation about that. But more importantly, the industry has had years, decades really, in terms of becoming more diverse. There's always all this talk about, oh, we need to take baby steps. We need to take baby steps to start introducing more women into this field. We need to take baby steps to start reaching out to Black communities and what have you. It's 2013. There needs to be moon man-sized jumps to make this happen. The time for baby steps is over. Jim Crow is over. Reconstruction is over. We don't need to make baby steps anymore. We should be making huge leaps. And so when people of color start making their own spaces and recognizing themselves, then you have, kind of the mainstream industry that sort of pops off. It's like, oh, I can't believe they're doing that. This is racist. Why can't it be all girls code? Why does it have to be black girls code? Like, what is that about? It's showcasing young black girls. You're teaching young black girls how to code. How is that a bad thing? How is that bad?
I agree. I think we definitely need to see a surge of women in technology and of minorities in technology. And I think that this is a very critical time to have that surge occur because it's going to affect the later generations. So what we're doing right now is we're putting these people in positions of leadership in highly visible positions so that these younger generations will benefit from seeing them as role models, and that will serve to further feed the pipeline that and we keep calling it a pipeline problem. Well, let's fix the pipeline problem right now by creating a surge with the people we have in the industry now.
Right.
Definitely.
You can't be what you don't see.
I like that. And speaking of, fixing a pipeline and having, people to look up to, who did you look up to? Who inspires you? And who?
Sorry, go ahead. Who are some of my mentors? Yeah. So this is the same question that I ask people, and I hate that I'm going to give the same answer, but I did not have any mentors growing up when I was getting into technology and things like. Well, no, let me take that back. If there was anyone that has really helped me sort of get where I am, that has sacrificed, it would have to be my mother, like hands down. She taught at a community college, and when she taught and worked, I was able to be in the computer lab while she was working. So this might have been after I got out of school, like high school, like after I got out for the day, I could come over to the college and work in the computer lab for hours learning programming and stuff like that, And I know that she's made just countless sacrifices for me, because I'm her son, duh. But, she's made countless sacrifices to help me get where I am. Outside of that, I could not, and I'm being completely honest, I could not tell you anyone that has been like an active sort of mentoring type of force that has been like, I'm going to show you these opportunities and give you I can't. And I hate to give that answer because I ask people with Revision Path the same thing, and they're like, oh, no, I don't know. I just kind of just fell into it. And, likewise, I kind of just fell into doing what I'm doing, and I've kind of paid my own way. And it sounds narcissistic, but I have reached out to mentors before. Like I've reached out to people and say, oh, do you mentor people? Could you be my mentor? And the response is usually, oh, think about it. Oh, I don't know if I'm a good mentor. Oh, it's going to cost this much to mentor you, that kind of thing, which no one has time for that. I mean, if you're going to mentor, you should do it, I think, freely. You shouldn't be looking to get a financial transaction out of it if you're trying to do it. I mean, that's coaching, and I'm not looking for a coach. So personally, I haven't. Aside from my mother, I really can't look at anyone in the industry and be like, oh, this person, helped me all these steps of the way. And now I've certainly done partnerships with people, and I wouldn't include that as mentorship. I'd include that as partnerships because these were things that I sort of kind of forged my own way out. But in terms of like mentorship, like I'm going to put you in front of this person that's going to help you, or I'm going to buy you this book that's going to show you what you need to do. Yeah. Trial and error.
So then, is there anyone that you're mentoring now? Do you have room for mentees?
Someone emailed me today, and I don't even know if this is mentoring, but I mean, people email me and ask questions all the time, and I'm usually, depending on what my schedule is, I'm usually very free to give knowledge about, stuff. Like this particular guy is a freelancer in New Jersey, I think, a freelance designer, and he's like, I'm looking to find more leads because I'm trying to get more work, and I'm looking around locally and can't really find anything. And so I, just sent him an email and was like, don't think locally, just try to branch out because the web is everywhere. Think about registering as a vendor for your city think about registering as a vendor for the state. There's plenty of job boards. You can look at this website that has job postings, like just stuff like that. I mean, but in terms of like active mentoring, not right now. I'm open to it though. I'm certainly open to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's so interesting. I really appreciate that you're paying it forward, and I would say that you definitely are mentoring in many ways, because even just the Revision Path site and having this list of people. And you've done work for this, and, you know, that's not your job. You know, you've really gone out and taken a step beyond to sort of further populate and add clarity to the industry of design and people whom people in our demographic can relate to. And I just really applaud you for that. So, I mean, when Greg told me about you, because I didn't know that you were out there, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I can't wait.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, Revision Path is something that I wanted to do for a long time. Really, I think since about maybe 2006, 2007, I wanted to do this, but I didn't really have the time to do it because I was working a full-time job, and I had the Black Weblog Award, and I was in grad school at the time too. So I didn't have time to like pull all this stuff together. But now it was, you know, my business was doing good. I said, you know what, this is the time for me to do it, because I've got the resources and I've got the bandwidth, I guess, so to speak, to do this. So I figure, you know, let me just put it out there, see what happens. I knew the first version wasn't going to be great, which is kind of what's up now. I knew it wasn't going to be great, but I was like, it's got to be something. Like, I've got to start. Like, I think that's important. A lot of us, when it comes to things like this, and that's whether, and this is just a general, like, overall life lesson, right? Whether you're learning to design or to code or you're starting a project or whatever, the first version is going to be terrible. Like, the first version is going to suck. Like, don't try to make the first version perfect. Just do the first version.
Yeah.
Like, just step out there and do it so you can improve and iterate. Like, don't worry that you've got to, you know, and I sort of did that too, right? Like, I waited for like 6 years before I got my ducks in a row to say, I'm going to do a Revision Path. Well, I could have just started it, and I did eventually. I just said, let me just go ahead and do it, and start it, and, you know, here it is now.
I love it. Great.
Yeah. I don't even want to go back and listen to the first episode of Blacks in Technology podcast. It's probably horrible.
Oh, the first podcast that I did, it was funny because someone that interviewed me, she was in town, and she's like, oh, I heard about Revision Path. I was wondering if we could do lunch and do an interview. And I was like, great. I didn't have an external, I still don't have an external mic. I didn't have an external mic or anything. Like, we recorded it on my phone in like a somewhat noisy restaurant, and I tried to clean it up as much as I could in Audacity, and I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to put it out there and see what happens. And since then, it's gotten better because I've refined my process. But, you know, at first you just gotta put it out there. You got to do it.
Yeah, I think the first time I did a Blacks in Technology podcast, I think I scripted it so much that it was terrible. I haven't even listened to it since I first did it, but I hate listening to myself. Once I record something, I usually don't go back and listen to it because I'm always like, you know how they say you're your own worst critic, and I know if I listen to it, I just like, oh my God, that was. But I kind of take mental notes as I'm doing it, and I'm like, oh, I have to change this, or I have to do this. So, but over time, you become more relaxed with it. You become more relaxed with the questions and your introduction, everything like that, and everything gets more refined. And next thing you know, you have a much better product. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Let me ask you, what are three things that you think that every designer or developer should know?
Okay. Well, no, I don't want to reiterate the thing that I said earlier about, kind of kill your work, but I think that's important. I'm not going to include that in the first one. The first thing I think is that you need to learn how to write. And it probably sounds weird. It's like you're a designer, you're a developer. Why do I need to know how to write? Because whether you're designing or whether you're developing, you still have to be an effective communicator. You know, you have to think through, say it's development, you're a problem solver. So you have to think through the entire experience, think about what words you're going to use for different error states and things like that. You have to choose that stuff carefully. And if you're a designer, that's the same way. If you're researching a particular, genre or a particular time frame, you've got to be able to know kind of what you're looking for, how to communicate that sort of thing. And not necessarily in like an academic, collegial kind of way, just learn how to write. And really, there's a saying that writing is rewriting. So really the best way that you learn how to write is to keep writing and just keep writing and keep writing and keep writing and reading, because reading and writing kind of fall right into play. So the first thing I would say is learn how to write, because that helps you become a more effective communicator, which then trickles down into whatever your specific work is, whether it's design or whether it's development. The second thing, and I think this also relates to both design and development, particularly design on the web, is learning some basics about user experience. Just learning about how do users use the web, so to speak. Like, how do people, if you're making a web page, are they reading it in an F reading pattern, or are they reading it in a Z reading pattern? Are your elements spaced far enough for people to read? Is your line length too long? What do your error states look like? What do your buttons look like? That kind of thing. So getting the user experience helps on the design and the development end. On the development end, it helps so you basically don't have to do the work twice. And it helps on the design end so you're not just creating some abstract thing that no one knows how to use. You're actually doing something that's usable, because designers and developers, I think, both are problem solvers, and you don't want to create a problem with the work that you're doing. So learning user experience helps you to sort of obfuscate, or not obfuscate, helps to clear up that obfuscation. There's a good book, I think the book is by by Steve Krug, called Don't Make Me Think, which is about web usability. I think that's a good book for anyone that's looking to get into learning more about just user experience in general. And what else for designers and developers? I would say just keep learning. Like I sort of said before, this is a relatively young field. This field is only about 20-something years old. It certainly doesn't have the longevity that a lot of other fields have. So you have to keep learning, because things are changing every day. Like, there's things that are going on now that just 2 or 3 years ago were not very commonplace with both design and development. There's new languages, there's new IDEs, there's new trends. Like, you always have to sort of keep learning and keep staying sharp, work on side projects, go to bookstores and look at the design section, go to meetups, keep your skills sharp and just keep learning.
So just sort of as a follow-up on that one about sort of keeping your skills sharp, this one is probably more for people who might be in school right now studying design. But when I was in school, and I did actually attempt to study computer science, but in the end, in the long run, I learned more in the field. But I would get frustrated in class. I would get frustrated with my instructors, because they were really outdated and they really didn't know what was happening in the real world. So I had a context of the real world, and I knew I wasn't learning the things that would make me more valuable out there. What advice do you have for students that might feel like they're in that same position?
That might feel like they're in school and the things that they're learning are not what they should be learning? Yeah,
that they're not learning the latest and greatest technologies. I mean, let me give you an example. When I was in school, I took a class around design, and they taught me typesetting. They taught me typesetting from the perspective of bound books rather than typography, or how to design fonts or typesets. And so it was just completely archaic and useless, for me, and useless for the industry that I was working in. And I think at that time, if I had maybe like some mentors, someone like you to talk through that with, it probably would have helped me. So I'm wondering, what advice might you have for folks who might be in that situation today?
Okay. I'll just say, first of all, I'd love to learn about typography. Like, I'm a huge font nerd. Like, I would love to learn all of that. I just sort of learned it on my own, like studying and stuff, but I find all that kind of stuff fascinating. Personally, because I'm a designer, I like that. But so you're in school and you think that the stuff that you're learning is pedantic and not what is going to further you in the field, which I totally get that. Couple of things you can do. First thing I would say is, if you happen to be a member of AIGA, AIGA, I think it's American Institute for Graphic Arts, go to AIGA meetups and talk to working professionals in the field that can tell you, like, this is the stuff that you need to know. I know here in Atlanta, the Atlanta chapter, they have, I think, about 1 or 2 events every month, and it's usually small meetups of about 15 or 20 people, but they talk about, like, clients and design and these are things you need to know and stuff like that, because, I teach at a college, and I can tell you I had to fight tooth and nail in 2013 to get them to not teach how to create web layouts using tables. So I completely understand, like, being in school and feeling like the stuff you're learning is just not working for you. So you have to go out and talk to people that are working in the field, and a good way with that is like AIGA meetups. Meetup.com also has several different design meetups. If you're in any major metropolitan city, chances are there are going to be design meetups. And I would say, if you go and you find that you're the only person of color there, that is common. That is just the way that this industry is. You will probably be the only person of color there. But don't let that deter you from not coming back, because the more that you come back and you sort of establish yourself as being a regular there, and people remember your face, go up, talk to people, introduce yourself, get some business cards made, even if you have just like a little basic website and your phone number. I can't stress, well, not necessarily, but I think it's important to get cards made. I'll give you an example why. I was at a recent Adobe event about a week or 2 ago, and it was Adobe had come into town. It was like Terry White, like the famous Terry White, and a whole bunch of other people that were just debuting all the stuff that's going on with Adobe Creative Cloud and this kind of thing. I call it Adobe's apology tour, because they had that big breach where they, like, 152 million user passwords got taken, and I was like, oh, this is their apology tour. But they were there, and they had, like, networking things. And so I was talking to people there just about Revision Pass. And I tell you, I talked to about 40 people. I walked away with 1 business card. The only person I remember is the person who gave me their card. I don't remember anyone else's name or where they worked. I couldn't tell you. And it's not because I have a bad memory. It's because nobody had anything that I could walk away with and say, oh, I know who you are. I remember you. I think a business card is important, even if it's, don't go to Vistaprint. Like, don't get a Vistaprint card, but do something from like Moo or I think Moo is really good. They have these little kind of like, almost like a stick of chewing gum type business cards that I use those, and they tend to be good conversation starters. So I would recommend that. But definitely meetups where you're talking to people that not only live in your city, but also work in your field. That's going to be the way that you're going to find out the stuff that you need to know. Like, you have to educate yourself on what you need to know. And not only that, but look at blogs, read blogs about design, read blogs about development. There are tons of them out there. Some good ones for designers, for example, might be CSS Tricks or Smashing Magazine. Developers might be right along that same line. Maybe Hacker News might be a good one. Designer News is also good for designers. And it just gives you an idea of what are people in the industry talking about, what's popular. And these are things that you can then turn around and use in meetups to sort of introduce yourself to people or starting off point, for conversation. Like, don't go in just empty-handed, like, oh, I'm just, pro-black me with my business cards and I don't know what to say. No. It's the whole, I don't know if either of you watch Scandal. I'm pretty sure if someone's listening to this, they watch Scandal. And, of course, the scene from the season 3 premiere where Eli is talking to Olivia and he's like, you have to be twice as good to get half as far. Of course, that's like the black parent motto that is like burned into all of our brains. That still applies. Like, if you go to these meetups and you're just a student and you've got your card, like, you have to show up offering some value, whether it's your conversation, whether it's I'm trying to learn, new things in this field. Like, do that. And after a while, you'll sort of hone your skills on, like, these are people that are good people to talk to and these are people I should stay away from. Because I think at first you think everyone is good until you find out that there are some not so good people out there. And that's life, right? But you don't know that unless you go up and start talking to people and interacting with people, and then you sort of can separate the wheat from the chaff.
Yeah, and I always stress to make sure that you are one of the good people. Like, make sure that you're not going out there and meeting people and just being super critical of science, putting people down. Like, make sure you're really adding to the wonderfulness in that culture. And
I will give you another example of this. This was also at the Adobe event. So you're saying, like, you have to be one of those good people. So there was one other person that I remember, but I remember them for not the best reason. I was sort of going around, sort of introducing myself to people and, finding out where people worked. And this one guy is like, oh, yeah, my name is the Kyle. Like, that was on his badge. It was the Kyle. And I'm like, oh, why is it the Kyle? And, and he's like, you should know me. You should know who I am. I didn't know him. I didn't know who he was. And I'm not saying that because I don't know the Atlanta design field, but I did not know who the hell he was. And I was like, oh, so, like, what have you done and where have you worked? And he's like, oh, yeah, you can look me up. You can find me. Because he didn't have a business card or anything like that. And he was saying, I'm doing a little freelancing, and I pick my clients selectively. And if someone wants to find me, they can find me. I'm like, hey, brother, it's a good thing you got a job and you are gainfully employed. That is great.
Yeah.
Because that attitude, and I can understand. I can understand where that comes from, but that, aside from making you look like a jerk, that doesn't help anybody, really. It really doesn't. Like, you don't want to have that. You don't want people to know that about you. Like, oh, don't talk to the Kyle because he's got, a chip on his shoulder. Like, you don't want that. You don't want that. So, yeah, definitely make sure that you're one of the good people as well. And if you're not one of the good people, at least don't show it. Like, tuck it in, Like, don't do that.
Tuck it in, right?
Yeah.
You're representing all of us.
Good stuff. So tell me, as a developer, as a designer, what do you think every designer, or what do you think designers or developers should have in their tech tool set? What are some essentials?
In their tech tool set?
Yeah.
Let's see. I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and give an unpopular answer, which is going to be Adobe Creative Cloud. And I'm not saying this like I'm shilling for the company. And I know that a lot of people are distrustful of Adobe, one, for moving their software to the cloud because people feel like it's forcing them to upgrade, which it's really not. You can still use your old standalone versions. They don't become automatically defunct. You can still use that. But people don't want to go to Adobe because they feel like it's too much money every month. But I feel like if you're making like at least $100 a month off of Photoshop, you can give half of that back to Adobe. That's the way I feel about it. And I know that there are like some introductory plans. There's like there's a $9.99 plan that goes on from now until I think October 2nd. So you get Photoshop and Lightroom and 20 gigs of free space and Behance site with Pro Site Edition or whatever for like $10 a month, and like that's the price. Which you got $10 for Photoshop. You have $10. Like don't be that guy. You have $10, right?
Yeah.
And even if it's like the price where it's like you have $30, you have $50, think about how much money you're making from the tool, and look at that as an investment. Because I mean, if you have a business, you can write that off. Don't look at like, oh, it's money out of your pocket. You can write that off as an expense. Don't necessarily look at it as like money down the toilet. But the reason that I say Adobe Creative Cloud is good is because of all the integrations that it has with other services that can help make you a more well-rounded designer or developer. Aside from, like, you can have a single app membership, right, where you can just use one tool. But if you get the entire Creative Suite, that means you have access to all of these different tools for that same price, which is really like a steal. So if I want to get more into print design, I can use InDesign for free. Well, for the price that I'm paying, I can use InDesign. I can use Adobe Audition for sound editing. I can use After Effects if I want to do motion graphics. So it's that like entire suite of things that you can have to learn from. And of course, there's tons of tutorials out there for like all of this software. So if you're trying to learn something new and like keep learning, and you have an Adobe Creative Cloud membership, it's good because you've got access to industry standard tools that people are using, that people will look at your resume and say, okay, I'm going to hire you because you know this.
Yeah.
I think it's good for that. But it also integrates with Typekit, so you have chances to play around with different fonts and typography. You have automatic syncing with Behance, and Behance is like a creative portfolio site for designers, so you can publish directly from Photoshop into Behance, which is amazing. You don't have to export and crop and resize and upload. You can straight from there. You can do that. They give you a free website if you do that. So you have a free Behance profile. You don't have to worry about paying for hosting, paying for a domain. If you want to get a custom domain, you can. They're at GoDaddy, like 99 cents. You can do that. So there's a lot of inherent benefits in there for someone that is trying to continue their learning, whether as a designer or as a developer, because on the development side, you've got Adobe Dreamweaver, of course. You've got Muse, which lets you sort of create websites in sort of a drag-and-drop fashion. They don't really have anything for, like, hard coding, from what I can tell. Like, if you're doing Ruby or PHP or Python, I'm not 100% sure Creative Cloud is going to be the best fit for you. But if you're doing more along the lines of web design, where you're dealing with HTML and CSS, and certainly with design, I think it's a good thing to have in your tech toolbox. The other thing I would recommend, and this is along the lines of learning, is a subscription to some sort of, subscription education site. And so there are several of these out there. There's lynda.com, there's treehouse.com, there's General Assembly is a kind of a new one that sort of popped up a little bit earlier this year. There's Code School. So there's a bunch of different like subscription. Oh, there's Learnable. Learnable's a good one. And with Learnable, you get courses and you get books. I think it's like $18 a month, and you get access to their full library of courses and books that you can download on your e-reader, on your iPad, what have you. And the reason for that, again, going along the lines of continued learning, is they're constantly putting out new content about new things. And for that, just one price, you can get video lessons. You can learn on your own pace. I think it's really good for doing stuff like that, just along the lines of learning. And I think the last thing, and this is really low tech, because I think everyone has their own setup. So it's hard to give a specific software thing outside of what I've already mentioned, but just a pencil and paper. I think for me, a lot of my best ideas start on the page, and they just sort of take off from there, because it's analog. I'm not sitting in front of a screen. There's no barrier of entry for me to get my ideas out the way I want them out there. Yeah. So just a pencil, and I usually have a little like Moleskine notebook and a pen, and I'm taking notes everywhere. I also use Post-its a lot. you can get like a 12-pack of Post-its at Amazon for like $15, and I use them everywhere. I've got one in my bag where if I'm thinking about something, I can jot it on a Post-it note. I can put it in a notebook, put it on something else. It's good for me if I'm doing storyboarding, if I'm doing flow charts. I can move stuff around, on a wall or something. Like pen and paper is always, I think it's always good just to get your ideas out quickly. I've never really been one to do a lot of digital note-taking. I know a lot of people swear by Evernote, swear by OneNote and things like that. And that stuff is great, but like I have to write it down. For me, I have to write it down or I'm not going to see it. I'm not going to get it. I've got to be able to write it down. So I think that pen and paper is just a good thing to have around because, you can't get Wi-Fi everywhere.
Man, I'm so excited over here. You just have no idea because I love my notepad and my pencil. And I'm telling you, I just, there's nothing that could replace it. There's no wait time. It doesn't have a battery. I love Evernote. Right. And I use my iPad for all sorts of things. But my notepad and paper is irreplaceable. And I tell people, make friends with people who write in notepads. Because they're going to be some of the most creative, kind of quirky people. But it's really about how you can communicate your ideas in a variety of ways, whether it's words, whether it's with pictures or whatever, and just on the fly and really kind of let yourself be free. And that just enables it. So, man, I love your tool set. I got it.
Yeah, I definitely have to co-sign that. I've run into people who've actually swore off, pen and paper. And they're like, why are you using pen and paper? You can just, type it in Notepad, or you can type it in here, or you can type it in there. And I use Evernote, but I use it in a different way. I use that more for if I'm, doing something on the web and there's a step-by-step about something that I want to save and look at later or do again. They have that the feature where you can pretty much copy the web page and directly into Evernote now, and I use it, for stuff like that. Or if I'm doing something and I'm taking down or writing down the steps in which I did, like an install or something like that, and I might want to reproduce it or something, I might write that down. But when it comes to, jotting down notes about, something that I'm reading about and trying to make sense of it, right? For instance, when I was recently learning about putting together the centralized logging server, right, that had these different components, and I wanted to, figure out in my head how all these components fit together and things like that, and write out a kind of a flow chart on what flows into what. I use a pen and a pad and put it down. That's still my main tool for studying and trying to remember things and trying to be creative with stuff. And so, yeah, I definitely feel you both on that. I have all types of notebooks laying everywhere.
Me too. I've got probably, I'm looking at a stat now that's on one of the shelves of my desk. I've got about 7 or 8 different, they're full notebooks, and it's like the little pocket Moleskinas. It's the little thin Cayenne Moleskinas. I've got the regular 5x5, 8x5, big ones like that. I've got a really big 8.5 by 11 one that's just graph paper that I use only for writing. So I probably should get stock in them if they're public. I have a lot of them. So I use them all the time.
Nice.
I never thought about stocking those. Good idea.
So, last question before we get out of here. You mentioned earlier one book that you felt that everybody or the people who are into development and design should get. Give me 2 more books that you feel should be in a developer or designer's library, something that they should definitely read?
Okay. I feel bad because these are not design books. These are not development books, only because, again, like whatever your discipline is that you're going to get into, because both design and development are very wide fields, it's hard to just say you need to read this book about design or this book about development, because I think it's more so about making sure that you get into a particular mindset so you can create whatever you do, whether it's design, whether it's development, what have you. So, and of course, I think there's even other books when you're just talking about like business books. Let's see. So other books that I'm thinking of that I've read that have been good. One of them is by Brené Brown. It's a book called The Gift of Imperfection. Oprah, like, I'm sure featured it on her book club or Super Soul Sunday or something. But it's about sort of tapping into your own sort of authenticity and tapping into your own kind of inner well of motivation and embracing whatever your imperfections are and just kind of going forward with that. It's a short book. It's less than 200 pages, so you can probably finish it in like a day or two. But it's not a design book. It's not a development book. It's a book that helps you get out of your own head, essentially. Because it's sort of like what I was saying before about how you have to be prepared to kill your work. It sort of sets you up for that level of detachment about the things you do. Like, you create great stuff, but don't get too kind of caught up on it, right? Because you have to iterate, you have to become better, that sort of thing. So I think that's one book that's good. The second book is one that I got. Oh God, when did I get this book? I got this book. When did I get it? It was probably. I was working for. I think it's probably around 2004, 2005. I got this book, and it's called Strengths Finder by Tom Rath. I think it's like Strengths Finder 2.0 now.
Yeah.
And it's not. I mean, it's not a book that you're meant to read the entire way through. It's actually a quiz. It's a quiz that you take, and once you take the quiz, I think you enter it in online or something, it tells you what your top 5 traits are. And, like, these are your strengths. Because there's this whole thing about, if you're weak on certain things, you have to build up your weaknesses. But what about if you just focus on your strengths, right? Because we all have, like, natural talents that kind of, go untapped and things like that. But what are you, like, really good at? Like, focus on what you're really good at and get a lot better at it, essentially. So Strengths Finder, for me, helped identify the things that I'm best at. So that then lets me know, well, these are things that I need to focus on the most. And if there are things that fall outside of that, I can find a way to use my strengths to make up for that, whether it's outsourcing it or if it's, whatever. So, like for me, for example, I think my strengths were, oh crap, I don't remember my strengths. It was, it was achievement, individualization, learning, strategic, and something that starts with an F, because it's funny because it spells out fails, like FAILS. But these are my strengths. And so for me, moving forward from there, it's like, okay, I know I'm a strategic person, so I need to focus on things that hone my strategy. I know that I'm focused on learning, so I need to find different ways to learn things and other outlets that I can learn, stuff like that. I think that's good just so you know what your strengths are in general, but also going into any project, going into anything where you have to collaborate with someone else. If you're able to say, this is what I know and this is what I don't know, it's a lot better than you saying, I know everything, and then it turns out you don't really know that much. There was one interview that we did. It was the 25th interview, and it was with Brandon Butler, who's the director of technical director at Edelman Digital. And he was saying, when we look for people that, we want to bring on our team or just in general, we're looking for someone that is coachable. Like, we're looking for someone that can be taught something, right? Yeah. So already, well, these are the things that I'm strong at. These are the things that I'm good at. But in the same vein, you also know the things that you're not good at, but these are the things that you can be taught in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have that knowledge kind of already there. So I think that helps in terms of any sort of collaborative project that you do, because unless you're just a designer or a developer on an island, eventually you're going to be working for a company, you're going to be working for a team, you're going to be working with people in general, and you have to learn how to use your strengths to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether or not that sort of taps into you being a better designer or a developer, I think lies within. But it's important to make sure that you've got that sort of emotional center to know these are the things that I'm the best at. These are the things that I'm good at. So these are ways that I can apply my strengths in this particular project.
Yeah, I
Excellent.
like that. I actually like Strengths Finders too. Yeah, I took it actually with the company that I work with a couple of years back, and it was really insightful for me at a stage where I was kind of trying to figure out what my next step would be, and really kind of seeing the areas that that I'm really strong at and seeing the areas that I'm weak at really did help me in a lot of ways. So I think all your suggestions are really good.
I just remember what my F was. It was futuristic. That's what it was. It was futuristic, achiever, individualization, learner, strategic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what they were. So for me, then I know that when I go into other projects or if I'm doing other things, I know that I'm always someone that's looking forward to what things can be. I'm someone that is always trying to continuously improve what I'm doing. I'm someone that looks at alternate ways to proceed to different things. So like stuff like that, for me, is important just to know what next steps I need to take. And I think that just helps with people in general, whether you're a designer or a developer. It just helps you get in that mindset. And then once you're in that mindset, you'll kind of know and gravitate towards the things that you know that can help you based on what your strengths are. So that's why I can't really say like, oh, you need to learn the program because it'll teach you how to program. It might not teach you how to program, because everyone has different learning styles. Some people are more kinesthetic. Some people are more visual. Like it's just different, right? So it's hard to give like a specific book recommendation. If you're talking about business stuff, I can give you business book recommendations because I have some experience with that. But just in general with design and development, it's important to sort of read books that get you in a particular mindset so you know who you are as a person. And from there, that's when you can sort of learn to let go of things, let go of your design, let go of your development, and use that to focus and go further.
Mm. So what I'm hearing is that you are a designer, and it's within you, and you just need to get out and get the exposure to help what's inside of you come out.
I mean, I think everyone is a designer in some aspects, whether they say they are or not. Like a designer is not necessarily someone that has to know how to draw. A designer isn't someone that has to be like particularly artistic with painting or something like that. I think everyone has that capacity to be a designer, in some shape, form, or fashion.
Yeah, I love it.
Love it. So, Maurice, before we get out of here, for people that's listening, tell them how they can contact you or how to follow you, or your URLs to your sites.
Okay, well, I have there's actually a lot of ways. There's a lot of ways to reach me, and not to sound like braggy, but if you just type in my name into Google, Maurice Cherry, and you click I'm feeling lucky, there's probably a pretty good chance you'll wind up on my site. Like my site might be the first search result or something. So there's my site. There's MauriceCherry.com. You can contact me through there. I'm on Twitter as Maurice Cherry. I'm on LinkedIn, Maurice Cherry. What else? There's Revision Path, of course. So revisionpath.com. We're also Revision Path on Facebook and Twitter. And I'm thinking of going and branching out to Tumblr, but I'm not 100% sure about that just yet. That might be a 2014 thing, but thinking about it. And then there's my business, which is 318 Media. That's the number 3, the word 18, 3EIGHTEEN media.com. We're also on Facebook and Twitter as 318 Media, and on Behance as 318 Media. Although it's about a year old, so we've got new stuff. I just haven't put it up yet. But those are the places you can find me. I'm pretty easy to get in touch with. I'm really pretty easy to get in touch with, despite popular opinion. Because some people are like, "Oh, you can never reach us." I'm pretty popular. It might take me a while to get back to you, but you will reach me. So, yeah.
Oh, great. Maurice, we definitely appreciate you coming on a podcast and telling us about, the things that you're working on, telling us about your background, and giving us a very, very informative and insightful podcast. I think one of the most informative that we've had in quite a while, and definitely appreciate that.
Well, thank you. It was certainly my pleasure to be here. Thank both of you again for not just having me on the show to interview. That's great, but just this whole entire platform is amazing. You were talking earlier about how you had, I think it was over 1,000 people. You got over 1,000 or 1,200 people in your community. Like, that is amazing. That is great. And the more of us because there's more of us that are out doing this. The more that we work together and we sort of come together, it's sort of like soul food, like, that family, like we got to be that fist. Like, the more of us that kind of come together and work on this problem, really this problem of diversity, or showing the diversity, I should say, showing the diversity that's in this industry, the more of us that come together and work on that, the better for everyone, not just for us that are currently in it, but especially for people that are coming up that need to see people that look like them in these positions to know that this is something that they can strive for. So thank you.
No, our pleasure, and thanks for leaving us with that last bit of information there. Thanks.
And we're definitely going to have you back, Maurice. If you will have us, we will have you back. So
you can have me back anytime. Just let me know. I thought I'm not hard to reach. Just let me know.
Great.
And just a last bit of what I want to put out there is there's actually somebody just turn somebody onto your website. I think they're a UI UX designer out of San Diego, and they just follow Blacks in Technology. And I was like, hey, you need to check out Revision Path, and they just added it to them to. I guess they just added. Yeah. So. Yeah, we've got interviews. I can tell you now we got interviews going. At least right now, I've got interviews scheduled to go out through early March. So I'm probably not going to start looking for more people to interview until probably around early February. Definitely, and I'm not saying this to dissuade anyone, but I'm definitely looking for more women to interview, because the next few months are kind of a sausage fest, but I'm looking for more women to interview, definitely. Because a lot of people say, we think it's really good that Revision Path is also focusing on highlighting Black women in this field, which I think is very important. But then I was looking at the calendar, I was like, well, the next 3 months is like mostly dudes. So I definitely want to I'm putting that invitation out there if there are Black women that are web developers, that are graphic designers, that are web designers, reach out to me. I've got a list of people that I need to reach out to on my own, but I'm probably, like I said, not going to get to that for a few months now. But we got some good interviews in December, including a discount code. I think it's like right around second week of December. So for people that are doing their Christmas shopping, they can check that out. We've got some great interviews in January. I'm not going to spoil it, but we got some great interviews in January. And then we got some good ones in February, too. So excellent.
Check us out. I appreciate it.
Maurice Cherry, everybody. Thanks a lot, Maurice. And like you already said, we'll definitely have you back on here in the future.
All right. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. I had a good time.
Great. Take care.
You too.
Blacks in Technology.
Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks